Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I wish you very Merry Christmas, season's greetings, happy holidays, and then we are on to a happy New Year. We plan to have another session before that, before the New Year 2024. But I think all our associates, all the scientists that's collaborating, uh, you know. Uh, Christopher, Christian, Emmanuel, uh, generally Gerd, and also John comes once in a while. Um, Emmanuel also, and also Wenzhang appeared a long time ago, as well as Manuel. So we wish everybody uh, a happy New Year 2024 and hope to see you all. Probably before that, if not after the New Year. And Riaz also mentioned that he will be there in the new year, and that we may have a few more people joining us. But just want to give a just again, I try to summarize things that's going on, and so that kind of an update. Presently, I'm working with Christopher about the support vector machines, and that has shown a lot of promise. And as he mentioned, that when I went through the analysis, the kernel is very important, and this comes from the original paper with the Emmanuel that I had uh, about the 2 by 2 matrix that is a decomposition of the Helmholtz uh, fields, that the kernel actually shows a micro black hole. That's the fundamental thing, and the anti-diagonal terms show about the vacuum. So this is a new analysis I come up with that I need to check again that uh, when you have the potential zero as v equal to zero in the Schrodinger equation or the quantum equation, I generally want to call it a quantum equation because of the quantum field theory and many advances that has happened still then, all the way to standard model and now quantum gravity. So I would say if v equal to zero, it's like a vacuum solution, and that's an error fraction. This is that I'm working on, or to see why that is the case, and that's an interesting thing because error function shows diffusion. So you know, I studied as a material scientist for diffusions, especially hydrogen into metals, things like that. And I have a model called a PC model that talks about that. But more how to deal with that diffusivity in terms of the non-linearity that could produce. Uh, so the error function, if we solve for the vacuum where the speed of light is constant, we get a lot of interesting things, including the understanding of time loops, things like that, that I talked with Christopher, and I think I mentioned the previous videos, and that's something very, very important because we are in a time loop. A present time loop is from 1960 to 2040. So it's a 80-year thing. After that, it will be little more than 80 years. That I come up with the analysis of the error function and error function complementary, things like that, manipulating the us in terms of time and space. So essentially, so we are first quartile 1960 to 1980, second quartile, I'll call it 1980 to 2000, and third quartile 2000 to 2020, and the fourth quartile from 2020 to 2040. So essentially, we are in the fourth quartile. A lot of interesting things happen in each quartile and the events and everything. But one thing I can uh, point out, and only that I'm going to point out today, is that the first quartile, it was mostly operational, and the last quartile should be only communication. But that's not the case. We have mixed aspects, and that's because the things that what was going on, a lot of things that should not have been going on was going on, and a lot of things should have been going on was not going on, and these are affected all of us. in terms of finances, in terms of even jobs and other things and the economy and how we are perceived. But I think we are getting out of it with our creativity. And now I have three different streams, actually, in effect, four different streams of teams and also groups after that. First one I started with the manual, and we had very successful publications, and that's going on. That's the fundamental basis on which all the approaches are based on, and it's the most fundamental physics I think to date, and talks about superluminarity and things like that. That I may touch upon, a little bit today as well. Uh, then I had really a team going on with Manuel in astrophysics, and we have published a lot of papers together in astrophysics, more the Einstein and the specific aspects of the functions in the Einstein-Podolsky equation and different Dahl and other aspects, and that showed very fundamental nature of the quasars about the astro objects, uh, including black holes and other aspects. And we have published a book also together, along with other scientists in the world, Manuel. And the third team was with the Emory Taylor. That's about the discontinuum physics. That has more than 10 papers we have now together, and that's a whole new approach. Uh, you know, that may be the ultimate approach about quantum physics and gravity, and the general theory may be uh, you know a specific case of that discontinuum physics, which talks about discontinuum energy fields, and also the idea of consciousness does automatically come into picture, and the physical reality, things like that. And we have table of realities that's being modified. And I think it shows that the actual real universe is where the discontinuum length is finite. Is probably it's actually more than the Planck space, because when I analyzed about general transforms, things like that, we came up that it came up a very good point that actually time may be what Planckized or quantized to the Planck level. Um, and then the actual space is c times that, the speed of light, which means is about 10 to a minus 26 meters. That will be about the discontinuum length at which the real particles and the matter universe or observable universe start to be observed. So what happens below that? It's essentially, I would say, is superluminous. um, that Emmanuel is taking upon different aspects, including gravitonic physics, spin two particles, and he has shown that indeed they can exist, and they are very similar electron structure from his PhD thesis on electron structures. Uh, he has proved that he's a Horn torus, and so the geometry aspects is one thing that I had talked about. The fourth team that I'm working with is Christopher. So we are in different teams, and the fourth team now, Christopher, that specifically comes because of the fact that if the potential, you can look back at the potential in the quantum equation. That if the potential is zero, as I said, it's a vacuum flat uh, error function solution, and the diffusion happens there. And there's some mechanisms that you know that evolved out of it, out of our model, uh, the Helmholtz decomposition model, called iron Markouliakis model, where the advancement of shows that there is a hot PDP mechanism that I published along with the whole group people, including John, and because John's original idea of STOI, the scalar theory of everything, showed about the Hodge, the most fundamental the magnetic aspects. So John Hodge was involved in that, and then also Wenzhang was there for his vacuum friction and other aspects. So we had published it in a Canadian Journal of Applied and Pure Sciences, or I'll just call them as CJ Pass journal. And I had a lot of publications recently as well that essentially proves the mechanism, quantum mechanism of or PDP, and the PDP mechanism that I published along with Christopher and Manuel again is a very fundamental thing because we analyze the electric and magnetic fields and how they come together, and that also explains how the gravity may be quantized. So, which means that there is quantum gravity, and then Andreas recently presentation about the fact that gravity is electromagnetic in nature. It's interesting. And we explained earlier, recent videos that these comes because the time of the Newton, the structure of the atom was not known. It was not until later with Rutherford experiments that showed that there's a nucleus and particle physics start coming, and there the Bohr atom, magnetrons, and other aspects. The actual experiment, Gerlach uh, and his associated, experiments showed that there is a fundamental magnetism in the the electron structure. So that causes the spin. So that pulled out for us that it is the magnetism that's the most fundamental aspects. And Emmanuel's work, experimental work, and all the new works about the monopoles that recently they have shown in the UK Cambridge work and different places that actually monopoles can be seen in terms of the scanning tiny microscope that I worked earlier. But if you have a geometric structure and a diamond tip, things like that, properly adjusted, and that experiment shows that actually, you see monopoles being present there. But monopoles, of course, with the Gauss theorem, and we should know about the Maxwell equations as well as the uh, Faraday experiments, that the real world, they exist only as dipoles. It's a very important aspect, and that connects with the continuum length also, and also quantum entanglement. So the quantum dangle aspects that's being observed are being also field and other aspects, along with the complexity aspects, brings about the superluminal uh, theory again more into the front. So the superluminal level get pointed out earlier, and all my publications also with all my associates and the group of scientists and the team of scientists uh, come to the conclusion that, and also the fact that grand theory of everything and also grand unified theories and other aspects show that there has to be monopoles to produce that level of energy that we have in the universe. And we still have a question about dark energy and dark matter and things like that, but the superluminal aspects may solve that problem. Uh, in terms of the fact that the superluminal level you have highly, monopoles existing. Uh, and they're existing in random fashion, but they have a lot of energy in them. Uh, and because the particular nature of superluminarity, they can exist as such. But with the random fluctuations and all that aspects, I have shown this mechanism in my recent CJ pass, especially CJ pass aspects. Also considering the switching circuit signal noise physics, uh, that we have to consider the fact that, if we go back to the switches and every point is either we think it's a binary 0 and 1, but my analysis show that there has to be a third one called off, uh, which is related to on and off. So if I put, I can say off is function of 0 and on, but more generally, on is a function of 0 and off. So so originally 0 presents vacuum, but the off aspects comes when the fact that the potential is not 0. non-potential. So at zero means the potentially zero, so that's an error fraction solution, whereas off means the potential uh, is not zero. And we have different solutions for Schrodinger equation. As we know, there is quantum well solution, square wave solutions. Uh, there are solutions for the particle in a box and different situations we get. And that may actually relate to the structure of the atom itself. So if you go at the outside surface where the electrons are, a Dirac field also shows that electrons are free electrons, essentially are the essence of the sea of electrons that Dirac comes to the picture. And of course, the antimatter aspects is the symmetry nature of that. Uh, that's where the monopoles also come into picture. But then that's we expand that. That's a vacuum solution in the flat speed solution, and we can show that. But as we go deeper into the atom, the potential is not zero. So you have different potential level, what we call as it, quantum levels of energy, and we know the energy is quantized. Quantum mechanics proves without question that energy is quantized, and that we can accurately measure that. Or the quantum mechanics in general has uncertainty aspect, the Heisenberg uncertainty aspect. So now, uh, when we consider all these together, uh, the quantum mechanics has shown that separability of space and time is possible. I mean, that's a solution to Schrodinger equation, and that is being proved mathematically as well as I think with a lot of experiments that we can consider as get separate the variables and then solve them the partial differential equations of the uh, normal differential equation with space consideration separately and the time consideration separately. So using that, now we are advanced with the Christopher's original idea of the anisotropic, uh, what he called Ohm model, which comes from the which eventually constitutes the uh, whatever support vector machines that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that. With the idea that I have, the transforms had to have a kernel. We put that together, and this paper, ResearchGate, shown that you can actually understand about the galaxies, how the galaxies form, how the attractor, and different aspects of that correlates with many of the experiments. So that's an interesting area that we are proceeding, and the new year will proceed a lot more further. That it's just shown promise for astrophysics. Uh, but also the quantum aspects is good. That's where Gerd's particle horizon as well as the black hole horizon aspects come to picture. But when I analyze the general transforms, that becomes the greater aspect. It contains all of the transforms that we know Fourier and Laplace, all of the transforms that I described, at various times in this video itself, and I have a lot of peer publications with the 20-page derivation that I have not been able to put that, but that is appearing peer-reviewed publication at some point in the future when we have the global conference. We hope to have a conference in Germany, hopefully next year, and then that will promulgate Hawaiian uh, conference meeting that will establish World University that would have venues every year at different places, including North Pole, starting or South Pole, different places. And so it will be intercontinental, different parts of the continent, including Europe, we'll start with, and then Asia, South America, different places. And of course, we are seeking funding and everything. But initially, with the German, we have many German scientists already in our team, in our group, collaborating with us. So that according to Christopher, as well as my intuition is that Germany may be a good place to have in-person conference to start with. So we'll proceed along that. And hopefully at that time, or but later, I can present that 20-page derivation as of the general transfers itself. But the inference that we get is that the whole universe is a black box. So Gerd's understanding that we are in a black hole, maybe that we actually may be in the event horizon of a black hole. So which means that the whole universe is a black box. The black box contains the black hole as well as the event horizons, which means both black hole horizons as well as the particle horizons are well inside the black box. So that shows the complexity with which it occurs. So the complexity of physics now is a very fundamental process that Sabine Wasserfield, many other YouTube videos specifically, mentioned that one of the parameters of quantifiers may be the uh, edge of the chaos, the complexity, because that explains why living systems, why the living systems, uh, we need to have complexity into consideration to understand about living systems as well as the consciousness, things like that. So, one of one of the things that we plan to proceed along with Christopher and all other team, our team, and the group of scientists, that international collaboration that we have, is to look into the fact that you know realistically, a lot of the mathematics and taken out of the realm of the physics, right? And we have the problem of quantum mechanics not, you know, consistent with the general theory and things like that. So we have this problem of vacuum catastrophe, ultraviolet catastrophe, things like that. Uh, just put a big doubt on the physics itself, what the physics is. But I think the problem is that the mathematics and the physics go from high level of sophistication, and that produces complicatedness. Now, complicated is not a good thing, but the actual nature of everything is complexity. So we have to differentiate between complexity and complicatedness. So we have to take it out of the complicatedness, the sophistry, which shows lot of you know uh, un, unexplainable or unnecessary aspects within the mathematics and physics, and spurious results, because a lot of the solutions of the partial differential equations are based on numerical analysis. Once you use the numericals, that may be a good thing to get some values, but they don't really represent the physics. So we need the analytical solutions. And in order to do that, we separate the space and time aspects, but also we need, I use matrix protocol to analyze these things, independently. So that's a monitor that looks at all of that ultimate uh, thing that's going to judge these aspects. But what that tells us, and then hopefully with the SVM and other models that own the models with Emmanuel, and also the superluminality and the gravitonic aspects that Emmanuel is talking about. And we plan to have multi-phase superluminal model physics, multi-phase physics with Emmanuel that plan to proceed, and also with Manuel's astrophysics that we are combining with quantum. And the Emory style is this continuum physics eventually, put all this together. So we have to bring all this into one platform, and I think they are the pieces of the puzzle together. And when we put them together, we start realizing that how they evolve for the quantum level and astrophysics. That I have mentioned in one of my peer-reviewed papers that we can differentiate, and uh, the field effect is given by the sense gives this field effect to time and space separately or together, depending on the level. So at different levels, uh, time, like the quantum level, the time is not is inactive, whereas at the mesoscopic level is quite active, and it is commensurate with the space field. So the field effect is very important as with sense field. And the superluminal level, even the sense field may become random. But because of the monopolar presence, the sense fields start to become active, the random fluctuations. And then we have the question of formation of dipoles, things like that, which fixes the speed of light constant. And then you have the vacuum phase, which helps, with the hot PDP mechanism, stabilizes them and forms the particles. And the particles then pop out of this vacuum. And now we have the mesoscopic level, the speed is within the speed of light. So the maximum speed is within that. That's the subluminal phase where it's we live in that field. So now in terms of the geometric model and time model, the space model and the time model, that I said that in general the potential is not zero, so we have to separate the space and time. And then with Christopher, his original geometric model says that it should be a 4D space, which is a toroidal space. And so he has solution that shows curved space, and then you have a flat space. And my general transforms shows that everything can be transformed in terms of time, but the time itself, with the Christian's, Calebo manifold, that's for space, but actually it's applicable for time. So some modifications. So we are translating uh, in terms of the space into time, or transforming. So when I do that, I get the virtual manifold. So this is a 6D time manifold, and I describe that evolves from the original mechanism called PDP quantum mechanism, and the distorted field aspects. Uh, that connects with the discontinuum energy field and all that. So that's one thing that could connect all of the quantum and mesoscopic, uh, global and astrophysical levels. So then you have the clocks at different levels. Individually, the information flows to the superluminal level to the subluminal level, and by in this process, the clock is created. Once the information flows into an entity like a particle, once the particle forms the subliminal, it starts a clock. So it has a clock starting, and that's, you can call it individual clock. But then many particles join together and tangle. They produce what I call communication clock, which is of a group effect, the group of particles coming together. Or for human, that's even applicable the mesoscopic level for the living beings, like humans. Also, individually, we get information in our brain, and that creates starts a clock once we start being alive. And then group of uh, uh, humans coming together, they have the communication clock. And surprisingly, what I find is the communication clock is much faster than the individual clock. Uh, that's something to proceed, and very interesting aspects come out of it. And then you have the global clock, like the Ben, Uncle Ben, clock, which is connected with the global nature of the Earth, connecting to its outer space, and stars and sun. So it's closely connected with the solar clock, and so that is the global clock. So the communication could be looking at the individual clock or the global clock, and then we have the cosmic clock. So the cosmic clock then, you can connect with all the rest of it. So we have the four different clocks, but there are also two other clocks with called proper clock as well as the real clock. The real clock is connected with the entities like black holes, uh, and, and then the proper clock is the movement. For example, in the event horizon, right? We know the Bob and Alice story, both in the general relativity as well as the talk about the quantum relativity, uh, especially for the with respect to the black hole aspects, the event horizon, how that changes, the communication changes. It's very detailed analysis that's taken. But the main aspect is the proper clock is, starting outside the black hole and the real time is inside the black hole. So the movement, equation of motion, if we consider that, uh, with advanced transformations, I think we have to go away from the Lagrange is one of the bar density and things like that, but we have to have a general transforms um, that talks about that and convert into space. So you have to convert from space into time transforms and the time transform back into. So my general transforms helping the both forward and inverse transforms. So that is very important to in order to understand the space and time aspects. So we have to consider separately the time effect and the space effect. Um, that's very important. Um, but they come together, and we have to find a way to come together and realize that it's a black box, which means we are just tapping into the thing. So we don't know really what is in there, but we are tapping, and then we are inferring what it is. So, and the difference based on the different tapping and inference shows that you know the time aspect and the space aspect can be considered separately. And quantum mechanics actually proves that, like I mentioned a little earlier. And then we see how they come together. For example, um, Christopher's the 4D, curved space is one of the solutions in the general theory, where what produces that is from the hot PDP mechanism. Also, you can come up with that the flat plate solution where v equal to zero. And the curved space, actually, I also said from quantum field theory, things like that, it's like a false vacuum. So, in terms of the ether, um, we have the ether, which has eventually the multi-phase, especially the superluminal, cogmare, what I call cogmare. And that's what ether is. But then with the chord PDP mechanisms like that, it forms uh, the multi-phase with vacuum having, the interface having speed of light constant and the subluminal below the speed of light. And that is because of the particle is created. And we realize that this is because the quantum and equilibrium monopoles that creates the dipole. And that is the one that becomes a Horde, and then a Horde then actuates the uh, part the quasi particles, uh, because electrons and positrons type of thing. They may exist only in terms of a quasi particle to start with, or partons we call it. But then, so they create that what PDP mechanism. That's described very well in our peer-reviewed papers. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but the key aspect that I want to emphasize here is that's a particle creator mechanism uh, that's happening. And then once the particle is created, that holds the speed of light constant, and then it starts with the information flowing from the thing, starts the phonons and the sound aspect. So you have the light and the sound aspects come into picture in the subluminal space. Uh, and we see that the mesoscopic level, thunder, lightning, and other creators of everything, and also the fusion fission reactions. particles also is promulgated. And that's because when you analyze, go back to the fundamentals again, the V equal to zero is a flat space vacuum. V not equal to zero is a curved space, and that curved space is a false vacuum. So the false vacuum has higher potential, I mentioned before, and the true vacuum has lower potential. So the lower potential, in my one of the uh, papers in a book in a chapter that's going to come up next year sometime, big the the March April time, I finally come up with the model that how the flat space is uh, like crucible type thing. But I describe more clearly what that is. It's a mediator to create fermions, essentially, and among other aspects. And the curve space, which is I call in that one as a false vacuum, is a crucible to create the strong uh, nuclear forces. So, and it kind of unifies all the four forces because then we can have a wormhole between the micro wormhole between the false vacuum, the true vacuum, which creates again the photonic, the bosonic aspects, and then we have the false vacuum connecting outside to produce gravitonic aspects. So these are interrelated, uh, but essentially these interactions create all the gravitons and bosons along with the fermions and also mesons. Generally, we call them hadrons. So they create eventually the protons. So as I mentioned earlier, if we go in the structure of the atom outside, V equals zero, in the fermionic level. And as we go inside, you have different levels of the potential, all the way up to the nucleus, the proton, where the proton is sitting. Like for a hydrogen atom, simplest of form is the proton. That V equal not equal to zero, that's the false vacuum sitting in. And but that is the crucible that creates now the neutrons and other aspects that eventually creates the isotopic hydrogen. Then you have deuterium and tritium, that's the fundamental force, fundamental element, material for the stars, create stars. And then from which, then eventually creates, starts synthesizing into heavier atoms like helium, according to the periodic table. You have all that all the way up to uranium, especially in the colder zone of the star systems, like Earth and other planets, and also the satellites like moons. Uh, so you have the temperature is closely interrelated to this strong force, but away from it, in the vacuum level, is much cooler, uh, and that creates potential where we live very close to that flat space, which means that the false vacuum also can be considered in the quantum level as a micro black hole, whereas the flat space is a zero-point field. So we are close to that. We are in the event horizon, not inside the false vacuum because it's too hot in there. Cannot survive. So those, from the thermodynamics point of view, we can argue that we should be in the event horizon at the most. And then we have the edge of chaos, essentially, that we have to deal with. And that makes sense because that edge of chaos will create complexity. And the complexity is the key to formation of you know life systems. That Sabine Suffield also has clearly quantified in many of the YouTube's aspects. And many other physicists agree that definitely complexity is the great aspect that we have to consider going forward in physics. So they all come together. They all fit together quite well, like piece of puzzle. But still, there are aspects. So as I mentioned much earlier in one of my Google thing, maybe like 20 years ago or earlier, we can consider like a paradox, like the Schrodinger cat problem, which are insolvable, whereas the puzzles are unsolvable um, because of the reasons that the unsolvable problem. Whereas problem, has solvable solution. So if we describe as a problem, it has a definite solution. Then only we can describe that as a problem. The puzzles can be implicit or explicit. So explicit puzzles are very close to problem, which has solutions, but we have to solve the puzzle. There are pieces of puzzle. We have to assemble in order to solve that puzzle. But implicit puzzle is much closer to paradox, and we may not have even enough pieces uh, to solve that. So, and then we have paradoxes which does not have any solutions, insolvable, like a Schrodinger cat problem. But we can convert the paradox into an implicit uh, puzzle by coming about with conditions and physics and math and everything, the logic. And I use matrix protocol also to understand about differentiate between the communication and operational aspects and the information and the clock aspects. Uh, Using those relationships, come up with algorithms and general transforms. We can convert paradox into implicit puzzle, and that we gather more and more puzzles with all the people piece of puzzle, and then we come up with the definite type puzzle. They can be converted to explicit puzzle, and now we have explicit puzzle. We have to solve. We are still in those stages between implicit and explicit puzzles. Once we move on, puzzle of genesis, I call it, eventually can be converted into a solvable problem. That's the idea. Right now we see that, for example, we see that uh, v equal to 0 is a flat space and v not equal to 0, which is v in this case is the potential, right? The potential function. So the potential, if it's not 0, that is now a curved space, like a false vacuum. But then with the quantum equation, we can separate the time and space variables, and like Christopher were working, make it to the 4D geometry of toroids, and then you have the flat uh, space where we live in, the projective space. That projection then solves the true vacuum where V equal to 0. So I think all these are coming together, but we should understand the complexity and which but we can move away from complicatedness, the sophistry of unnecessary sophistry of mathematics or spurious aspects to resolve the question of vacuum catastrophe and ultraviolet catastrophe. Uh, by understanding these, by having a proper piece of puzzle, we can solve these and become a grand unified physics. That's what we are working on. And quantum gravity may be one of the aspects because we understand the structure of the atom and their electromagnetic nature. There is the direct connection between gravity and electromagnetism. Like Einstein's aspect, the warping of space, like I mentioned before, is maybe because of the electromagnetic aspects. And that creates the gravity. So there you go. We have automatically got a gravity aspects. So hence the quantum entanglement that I think Sabine Hasselfield describes in one of the recent videos, that the two quantum objects are, have entanglement. There's a quantum mediator in between, and the gravity aspects then means that quantum gravity is quantized, and the quantum aspects of gravity are interrelated because of electromagnetism, through electromagnetism, because the structure of the atom has inherent magnetic field, but because of the interactions, they seem neutral, but they are really not neutral. So those are the aspects that we focus more and microscopically examine, and then we can understand about how the error function becomes like a quantum function is the diffusivity of the superluminal phase is extremely large. So we still in the error function we have the x over square root of d times time. That's error function, the variable within the error function, and the d is a diffusivity, like for the mesoscopic level, like hydrogen, it's much lower. But in the superluminal level, that D becomes very, very high. So then, we are talking about almost instantaneous aspects. So that's why we see the speed instantaneity of the speed of light and also of gravity, because even the gravity is separated by light years, it almost seems instantaneous. And that's necessary for keeping the orbits in place with sun and everything. The instantaneity is quite important. So which means superluminarity is important. So the diffusivity in the superluminary is so fast, maybe very close to infinity. That is, for example, the monopoles can do that job. That creates the stability of the galaxies and star systems and things like that, and also the information of gravity comes much faster than the speed of light, and we have shown that it's many many orders of faster than speed of light. So the gravitation field aspects. So all these are coming together, but we are cross checking the consistency of that, and by that process, eventually we will resolve the vacuum catastrophe and the ultraviolet catastrophe. That's still bothering. Uh, that's really a thorn in the unified physics, making it difficult right now. But I think eventually we'll be able to resolve that, because we still cannot see, because magnetic action is very localized. It's a short range, and how the long range aspects and the diffusivity come into picture is still a big problem. That's why the dark matter, dark energy aspects is coming into picture, because your dark matter, you know, to account for the rotation curves in the astrophysical level, and also dark matter about the expanding universe. Uh, that what is going on inside maybe the superluminal thing, with the monopoles that can, entangle at light year difference, because there's a north monopole and the south monopole many light years away. They can entangle almost immediately, but the closer ones, of course, entangle, but the longer ones also has a field that will bring them together. So and then we have the complexity automatically built into the picture, and they create that for PDP mechanism, quantum mechanism, and the distorted field, which creates the vacuum and the subluminal levels, and against the observable universe. So they all seem to fit together. But we have to know the new derivations, calculations, and all the experimental techniques to verify all these aspects. But I think it's a very promising field, and we hope to take upon these projects the coming year. So again, wish you all a happy new year, 2024. But we'll hope to have next week, just before the new year, to kick off new year, with the understanding of we are starting with a new series of videos of history of physics, 10 episodes starting with what led to classical physics, things like that. And most likely, I probably will have a 10 minutes introduction, and then after that, Christopher will start the next 10 minutes. Then we'll all start together, and we may either separate presentations, or we may have a group session with all of them participating with questions, presentations, question, Q&A, and then we have discussions, debates that takes us from the initial part of the physics one to the modern physics, with the standard model and symmetry and supersymmetry, as well as the quantum gravity aspects, and other things that's developing. So we standard model that aspects, and a whole new and the modified Newtonian dynamics that Sabine Hosserfield pointed out may have a little problem, but I think we are not particularly using that. But the quantum gravity is a separate issue from that, so I think that should not be a problem, and that we'll resolve as we go along, like we do. We resolve as well as we magnify We have to resolve first before we magnify or amplify the thing. And that's how we measure, we sense what's going on, the information aspects. So it's a wonderful thing, Christmas season, and we wish all the best with the family and friends, and look forward to a brand new paradigm shifting physics in the coming year with the global conference, in-person conference, and so a lot of exciting things happening. Okay, so with this, I leave now and hope to see you all next week. Thank you very much.